here from Israel. I want to share with you a few moments of awareness and consciousness, and super happy to hear your kirtan. You know, it's a big reset time. Reset means world is going to be different and it's not coming back. So there are many ideas what the world is going to be like. So some people have some very negative impact, talking about digital slavery and vaccines. Some people talking about good impact, and world will be less consuming, less materialistic. But so far, so good. What I understood that it's a great time to decide what is that you want to do, because whatever you are doing, as that's the world around you. So there are many people trying to change the world, but they never understand that changing the world means changing the self. It's very difficult to change the world, but it's more difficult to change the self. So, you know, in the beginning of the century, there were many so-called self-help books. And the self-help books, technically, they will tell you, oh, you can program your own future, you just have to believe it, blah, 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 blah. But, you know, some real philosophers consider this the most stupid way of bringing this kind of superficial literature on the market. Because when we talk about self-transformation, it's not just some kind of superficial belief or ability to do it. In order to change yourself, you have to have a lot of work. But even that is not guaranteed. Like, how many people want to be the number one musician? How many people want to be the number one player? But it's not guaranteed. Although they practice all day long, you know, some of the sportsmen are like playing football, you know, 16 hours a day, and still they lose the games. So when it comes to self-help and self-transformation, what really the smartest people decide that in the path of self-transformation, what really works is that when somebody enters some unique life situation and someone will meet somebody who will influence him as a person. When we say unique life transformation, sometimes it means very bad situation, like, you know, like for instance, if you are know the biblical stories of what's the guy name? Как его зовут? Иаков, да? The one biblical character that were later become ruler of Egypt. So he was from Judea, from Israel, and his own brothers, Yaakov, right?
Moisei.
Oh, no, not Moisei, Yaakov. His own brothers hate him because his father loved him the most, and they sold him to slavery.
Joseph.
Joseph. So he's been sold to slavery, and in slavery, he still revealed his genius to become the manager of all the slaves because he was good organizer. But obviously, the wife of the boss like him, and she wants to seduce him, but because he denied have you know, some exchange with her, because he was like you know, very kind of like moral guy, she accused him into trying to rape her, and he was been thrown to jail. Even in jail, when he was in jail, he was doing amazing things, and the jail keeper made him in charge of all the prisoners. So you see, the guy had very difficult life situation. So he was sold to slavery. Then he was in slavery. He was in charge of, you know, the slaves. Then he was accused, you know, and been thrown in jail. And even in jail, later he became like advisor to Pharaoh and almost prime minister of Egypt. So as you can understand, there are, his life transformation is always bring him to very, very difficult situation. But what you can really understand about him, he had some skills from previous life. Otherwise, how he was such a great person with such a great qualities. But even having a great qualities from previous life, he has to use his brain and his understanding how to develop, you know, himself in this very life. And so it leads him through a lot of different transformations and sufferings. But really, when you say where did he learn all his great, spiritual things, he definitely had meetings with some great people who had wisdom. So you can understand, even from history of historical personalities, that beginning of auspicious transformation is meeting somebody who has great spiritual qualities. And that's an Indian tradition called guru. So, and we know whether you Buddha or Jesus, even such a great personalities, they also had gurus. So they had somebody who um, teach them, although they were teachers themselves, but there's no teacher who can come without teacher in this world. So that is the learning principle. The learning principle means to surrender to higher knowledge, to accept higher knowledge, and later, when you become resident to higher knowledge, to transfer this higher knowledge to others. And that's where phenomena starts, because when you learning things, that's one level, but when you teaching others what you learn, that makes much more impact even on yourself. So therefore, in India, the principle of guru is not just a principle of spiritual reality, it's principle of any kind of development. And if you really, really look at the human nature, they always looking for to be inspired by someone. Although in a Western society, word guru become not very popular because people say, "Oh, you have to learn how to think yourself." But if you see from media and news that people are not thinking for themselves, they always have somebody tell them how to think. And unfortunately, they don't have enough information about science or politics or even their own health to be able to make their own conclusions. So therefore, instead of wasting time on bullshit news, we should think, where is the source of truth? Where is the source of information which will be more beneficial for me? And we'll look at a different source of information. Like, can we really trust news? Yeah, sometimes we can, but really can't do it. Then we should say, well, can we really trust people that are not spiritually inclined? We also say, well, that's probably not, because we don't know these people. We don't know why they're talking to us. Maybe they have their own motive. Then we can see, we can trust our friends. We can trust people that we love. We can trust people that we connect with. And if those people having great knowledge and they're sharing that knowledge with love, then we can say this is the best way to receive knowledge. Therefore, in Bhagavad Gita, it says, Tadvithi pranipatina pariprashnena sevaya uparikshantite jnanam jnaninas tattvadarshana, which means through surrender with inquiry and goodwill, by serving and having proper attitude, one can receive spiritual knowledge by connecting with somebody who's already realized. So technically, there's so much information, but the true knowledge has to be realized. Therefore, in Vedas, it says divya gyan, or transcendental knowledge, knowledge that not just information, knowledge that just can consciously be transferred to someone. So I was looking at one lecture of one professor who said a very interesting thing. he said, I can teach you how to learn any language in 6 months. And some people think it's very, very difficult, but I've learned Chinese in 6 months. And the way I did it is I did not go to very classical way where people say, well, you need to learn alphabet, you need to learn words, you need to learn forms. That's going to take you many, many years. And still, after so many years, people have not been able to speak Chinese. He said, my principle was different. I've learned very few basic words, and then I engage with people. And by engaging with people, I create sympathy to me. They become sympathetic to me. If I say some Chinese word very wrong, they will teach me how to say it right. If I just show them, some object, they can tell me what it is mean. So, but interestingly, what he's explaining is that, as we all know, AR, artificial intellect, we actually also, our intellect is also artificial. It's called subjective learning. So when we enter the environment, our artificial intellect, our own self, start learning from things. In other words, if we influenced by Chinese-speaking people and we are inquiring to learn Chinese, our intellect will have subconscious learning of that environment, of that language, and although in the beginning we will not notice the great results, but as time will pass, there'll be some amazing transformation in our lingo understanding, because being in the environment where language been used and being with people that think in Chinese, because speaking Chinese means you have to learn eventually how to think in Chinese. If you can think in Chinese, that means you more understand the language than just superficial speaking. So we also believe that in a spiritual way, it's the same principle. You do have to learn things by connecting with devotees. And although superficially it doesn't look like you sharing your mind with them, but in true reality, what's going to happen is you eventually will share the very subtle spiritual energy, which will eventually produce tremendous result in your spiritual impact and understanding. So that is called sadhu sangha, an association of devotees. And that does not require only singing song or reading the book, because eventually you can listen to the song, you can read the book just by yourself. But when you engage, when you're doing it together, when you're doing this with devotees, with the proper attitude, you settle like subconscious plane is opening, and you start just like radiation. You're getting a spiritual radiation. So eventually, after some time, you start realizing great benefit of that, although it feels that it's not objectively being transferred to you. So, so Guru Maharaj would explain. So if you are, let's say, near a volcano, in the very beginning, you cannot really understand how powerful volcano is, because in order to volcano to reveal its energy, it has to explode. But you can feel that this place has some underground energy. So in Sadhu Sangha, the spiritual association, that's also how it works. So although we are not yet resigned on internal conscious plane, but just being near devotees or hearing powerful, language of Sanskrit and the mantras and vibration of the songs, and being towards spiritually motivated people, we do have that feeling. That's why in Israel, you have Jerusalem and so many people from all over the world coming there, although they may not be subjected to a deep religious experience, but just being in city of Jerusalem, they feel something that are beyond their expectation. And especially when they're coming back from Jerusalem, they start feeling even much, much deeper, some spiritual vibration. So, so that means really it's an endless way of consciousness, and consciousness has so many frequencies and has so many vibrations. Although divinity is truly infinite, but it has infinite way to reveal itself to finite human beings. So I hope I explained this in very clear English. I don't know if I should recall something, re-explain, but just to share with you a very simple idea from the English professor, but applying the same principle into Vedic understanding of truth and AR, artificial intellect. Because like, they say machine learning, but people also partially machines. So we do learn from environment. So, and the consciousness is an amazing thing because it translates to us in form of feelings. Therefore, what is important for us is when we meet someone, not is that what that person say, is that what kind of feelings we have. So we kind of, partially trust our inner sense, inner feeling to say, yes, this person has a great energy, or, oh, I don't really like that person. He might speaking very nicely and promising so many things, but I don't get the energy, I don't get the vibe. So, and especially this is important, like, because sometimes, like, let's say women, they're more sensitive. It's an interesting thing about women. Women has twice more speaking ability and speed. If man can say 10 words and digest them, the women can say 20 words. And therefore, sometimes it's very difficult for man to speak to his wife because she's just thinking like, hey, dude, you're too slow. That's why when women meet, they can speak faster. It's due to their physiology, but it's not that the men are bad by speaking slow and less. It's to the man, the words may have a deeper meaning. So when you say, what does that mean, deeper meaning? Because, some man can speak very heavy words that mean a lot to him. So we're not talking about speed of communication. We're talking about what does that we really mean when we say things. So, and especially it comes when you meet religious people because they all going to say the same thing. Oh, love God, pray, chant. But what does that really mean? That is where you start realizing who has superficial meaning or very common meaning or who has deep meaning. So although the words could be the same in persons, but the realizations of those words, the conscious feeling that you'll get could be totally different. That's why in exchange for that, in Kali Yuga, the modern time we're living in, what is prescribed to people is Harinam Sankirtan, means getting together and chanting together. Why is that so? Because normally yogis, they do japa, silent chanting. All the yogis are, prefer to do silent chanting, inner chanting. Just like sometimes in Jewish tradition also you see like people pray by the wall. It's also pretty much Vedic because in South India you'll see they're teaching in the school children Sanskrit, and they say when you chant mantra, you do your prayer, you have to vibrate and you have to kind of catch the vibrating wave. So you see very many very close ideas in Judaism. In fact, word Om Shalom, Shalom contained word Om. So there's a friend of mine, Satiraj. He wrote a book named Om Shalom. The base of this book that Judaism is a part of Vedic religion as well. And it's obvious to everybody because historically we can understand there were only one religion and all Vedic. But when we say Vedic religion and scriptures, because see, in ancient present time, the Vedic civilization, the Veda means to know. There were all kinds of knowledge, including mathematics, philosophy, medicine, everything. That's how in India it's still being understood. So, but if you go to Indian Ayurvedic Institute, they will teach you cosmology. and you say, hey, dude, like, why you teach me physics, chemics, and cosmology? And they explain you, because your body, if you want to become a doctor, you should understand how the universe function, because your body part of cosmology, you're part of the space, you're part of the infinite reality. So how can we not teach you? So you see, it's very funny, because in modern way, religion, science, philosophy, it's all separate knowledge. But if you study the Vedas, it's explained, it's all one knowledge, but just different parts of that knowledge. Just like, for instance, word zero. So, I've recently studied, look at some, the ancient maps of the world, which are amazing, because some of them are very clearly a repeat, for example, Antarctic shell. And right now, Antarctic shell is covered by ice. So where these maps came from? Obviously, they came from highly realized beings. Otherwise, how they could draw Antarctic continent? And when you look at different maps, and there's also, you'll find a lot of mathematical studies, especially done by Arabs in Middle East. And then you will see that actually they learn Indian numbers. That's where the numbers, we call Arab numbers, but they're actually Indian numbers. So the numbers that we're using right now came from India. And even certain numbers, certain scriptures, Arabs didn't even change the name. They kept Sanskrit names, like some of their astronomical books called Siddhantas. So when you look at the elephants and flat earth, you would think like where these old pictures came from. These are the Vedic representation, but they came to the ancient scientists. However, it's not that easy to understand the Vedic cosmology and Vedic mathematics. But one interesting thing is that what is being different from everybody else is the numbers, like zero, and numbers like Fibonacci. So not many people understand that Fibonacci was Italian mathematician, but his first book that he published was called Indian Mathematics. So he was fascinated by Indian mathematics, and he, from Indian mathematics, extract Fibonacci principles. So if you look at the Fibonacci principles of golden rectangle, you see these are the algorithms of the nature. So think of this, in the Vedic knowledge, algorithms of the nature were pronounced by numbers and by mantras. And later the Arabs as well were fascinated by Indian numbers, and especially the Indian numbers is zero. 0 plus 0 will be 0. 0 minus 0 will be 0. So 0 is the number of absolute, of the God. In Kabbalah and Zohar and other books, there's so much intentions giving to numerology. And if you really ask, there's a great academic Perelman who proved Poincaré theory, which is basically it's a partially spiritual idea, but you have to prove it with numbers. So he's from St. Petersburg, and his name Perelman. He has obviously a Jewish background, and when he went to America, he met somebody and read some of the mathematician work, which he understood as answer for this theorem. But he was the only brilliant guy who can understand this is the answer. So based on that idea, he complied his own explanation of this theorem, and they want to give him like the highest price of mathematician, like $1 million. But he denied that. He said, well, I'm not really interested in money. Sorry, guys. And they're like, come on, dude. You're not interested in $1 million. He said, no, I'm not. So they start tracing this guy, and they thought, well, maybe he's so rich, or maybe, he get a lot of pay. But what really they found, he live in like 1-bedroom apartment where he only has a bed. He doesn't even have table. So he's waking up, sitting on his bed and thinking about numbers. And they say, why did you deny money? Because you could buy so many things for your work. And he says, I don't have time for the external things, for computers, tables, and chairs. I just don't have time. All I'm doing is like I'm existing in the world of consciousness. I exist in the world of numbers. And to me, understand how the universe functions is much more sophisticated than just to have money in this world. Because if I will have money in this world, they lead me to go to store, buy things, like do things that I don't really have time for. So you can understand this guy is an extraordinary personality who does have understanding that world is run by energy, and any kind of energy can be digitized or represent graphically. So therefore, in Indian mathematics, trigonometry with the mandalas and mystical things has a deeper meaning. So in the modern way, the great mystics would call this sacred geometry, but really this sacred geometry has very, very clear form in Vedic system of spiritual science. For instance, every mantra has its own yantra, means every sound has his own graphical representation. So Tesla said, if we really want to understand how world and energy work, we have to think about frequency and vibration. So frequency and vibration, it's also how this whole matter is functioning. And in previous time, the great Munis, Rishis, and Yogis, they could manipulate sound with the power of mantra and create things. So that's why we say the magic word. But really, it's what is really manipulating the matter is the sound. And sound has to be enriched with a thought and idea. That's why you can have a blank sound, like meaningless sound, or a sound full of meaning. So when we begin our spiritual practice, in the beginning, when we chant mantra, but we don't have enough consciousness, not a vacant consciousness yet, our chanting could be very superficial. But as we are receiving the mantra from the guru and practice this mantra as everyday inner meditation, and again, meditation does not mean close your eyes and just do something. No, you have to really learn how to enter to another, and take time. It's a really amazing, but it's require a lot of qualification, I would say. That's why in mystic yoga, yam, niyam, asan, pranayam, pradhyahara, dharana, dhyana, samadhi, dhyana meditation comes on quite higher stage of self-realization. In other words, what it really tells in this sloka, that until you achieve higher consciousness, you will not be able to practice true meditation. However, the mantram means manushya trayate. Man means mind, and tram means to free. So mantra also in Sanskrit means to somebody, by chanting this sound vibration, to be free from its own mind, from its own bondage of the mind, and go to level of pure consciousness, the pure soul. So therefore, there are different stages of chanting mantra, and the super beneficial chanting will come by chanting together, because due to combine together the forces of the consciousness, that magic starts happening. But however, it has to be somebody who more relies, who's more experienced. So as more that person are experiencing, is more you're around somebody who has that power of consciousness and chanting, at more it will transfer to you. Anyway, that's all I want to say, guys. And I think I give you a lot of food for your thoughts. And so now you know about Arab numbers and Fibonacci numbers, and how the numbers connect with form, and form with sound, and sound with consciousness. So, sorry, some dogs are screaming. So anyway, so think of this. You're not trying to do something one. just like Vedic science is not a one size, it's not just like medicine or philosophy. No, it's rather complete science, absolute science. Therefore, in Vedas, everything begins from the word Om. And when you say Shalom, that means also Om, Sha Om. So their mystical sound, Om, exists even in, your own cultural language, because everything begins from Om and everything resides by Om as a spiritual vibration. But Om is a unique vibration that has Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. All planes of consciousness are combined together. However, the Krishna Nam or Krishna mantra has more power because it reveals the personal feature of the divinity, of the God, of absolute. So Krishna is not just absolute, he's a sweet absolute, which means beautiful absolute. The beauty is leading principles of reality, because we all move by beauty, charm, love, and attraction. We're looking for object of beauty, love, charm, attraction. And that is embodiment of personal qualities in Krishna. And that name, as a mystical spiritual sound vibration, contained all those qualities. In other words, so by vibrating name of Krishna, or Gauranga, you are gradually connecting with the subconscious deeper plane. And as I've said, as AR, I would say cosmic intellect, you may not feel it right away because your feelings are not there yet to experience subconsciousness. But being connected with that reality, you can experience this with your inner self, and eventually it will reveal itself to you on objective plane. In other words, when you practice your spiritual practice, you don't try to feel something. It's just like when you eat one spoon of food, you're not going to be full completely, but when you finish your meal, after some time, the satisfaction will come to you. So that is also in spiritual practice. By doing a little bit, you will not feel this absolutely result, but by continual conscious, conscious performance, eventually you'll feel something great. That's called sadhana siddhi, which means result of your spiritual practice. But don't think it's cheap. Don't think it's, you get it overnight. Don't think you get it without dedicating for it. That doesn't work like this. Everything in this world you have to earn, deserve, and to show, to prove that you're someone who wants to receive something special. That's why not everybody can become a yogi or devotee, because it's required faith, dedication, self-sacrifice, and the mercy from higher plane. Anyway, guys, that's all I'm just trying to say. I think I have said enough for you to think about things. And if you have any questions. Well, it sounds like I've been very clear. So good luck, guys, and stay in touch, and hope to see you in Israel one day. I'm going from Thailand to America, and then I'm going to India for filming project for 3 months. But, God knows, maybe on my way from India, we'll see how world's going to work. I'll stop by in Israel and see you all. Thank you so much. Om Shalom. Love you all, guys, and amazing for your spiritual program. Take care.
Thank you very much.
Okay, guys. Stand by.
Я не поняла, по дороге из Индии или по дорогу в Индию?
Из Индии.
По дороге из Индии. То есть